Good morning, friends, and welcome to another episode of Tabletop Humans, where I invite other humans in the tabletop space to chat about the work they do, whether it's game design, actual plays, charity work, what have you. We'll play a little party game, and then we'll have you home in time for lunch. I'm your host, Just the Human, and today's human guest is Jeremy Cobb, an incredible actor, writer, director, and professional GM and actual play performer, most notably found as the DM for Three Black Halflings. I am so excited to chat with Jeremy today about world building, creating an immersive D&D game, and so much more, not to mention what his good morning proclamation is going to be for today. With that being said, Jeremy, welcome. Thank you so much for joining me today. Will you please introduce yourself as a human and tell us what you do in the tabletop space and outside of it?
Yeah. Hi, everybody. My name is Jeremy Cobb. My pronouns are he, him. Thank you so much for having me, Jess. I'm very excited to be here. Your intro pretty much covered it. I feel like there isn't that much left for me to say. I don't know. What's a fun fact about me? I'm a dual citizen, both British and American, but I did not find that out until I was, I think, 26 years old.
Oh my gosh,
I,
that's such a fun
yeah.
fact.
Yeah. My mom. So there was a whole thing. If you're not familiar with the history of Britain after World War II, when the country basically got blown up in the Blitz, they were like, "We got to rebuild. We need help." And they went to their colonies in the Caribbean and were like, "Hey, we will give you guys jobs if you guys come over and work here. We need help." And so they brought tons and tons of people over from the Caribbean, especially Jamaica. And I think the first ship was called the HMS Windrush. And so there was like a whole generation of people from, I think, it was like 1947 or 1949 up until about 1970 something that all came over. And that's called the Windrush generation. And so my grandmother and mother were both part of that. My mom became a British citizen in 1980, even though she was born in Jamaica. And unbeknownst to my entire family, that automatically made me a British citizen. So I did not know this until after I graduated from drama school in the UK and was hoping to remain there. And we were looking for legal loopholes that would allow me to do so. So I had graduated from drama school. I was in rehearsals for a play, and we were like racking our brains trying to figure out, like, okay, how can I do this? So I contacted a solicitor there and was like, hey, do you know of any legal recourse I can have to be able to stay here? And I was explaining my situation, and she was like, wait, did you say your mom's a British citizen? I was like, yeah. And she was like, was she a British citizen before you were born? I was like, yeah. She's like, oh, well, then I think you're a British citizen. And I was like, what? And she was like, yeah. I was like, but I just paid international student fees at a university for 3 years and a visa. And she's like, oh man, I'm sorry, but I just paid for a visa for a country that I'm a citizen of. She's like, yeah. Well, I mean, good news, you can stay there. So it's like, oh, okay.
That is absolutely wild. And Jeremy, actually, in your fun fact, you answered the first question that I had wanted to ask you, and that was, how did you get your start in tabletop? Do you have a performance background? And you very obviously do have a performance background. So I'd love to hear how that transfers over to what you do now.
Well, actually, one led directly to the other. So I went as I was fully a theater kid for, like, especially the last 2 years of high school. Then in college, I went to an American university for a couple of years, studying theater arts, and then I eventually transferred and went to a drama school called Rose Bruford College of Theater and Performance, which is in like East London. Technically, it's Kent, not actually London, but who cares? It's the same thing. And I graduated from there. And after I graduated, I hung out with some graduates from the previous year, and they mentioned that they were going to play, that they were like in a D&D campaign. And I'd heard of Dungeons and Dragons, but never actually played it. And it sounded really intriguing to me. It sounded really fun. And I was like, can I play with you guys? And they were like, no, we don't have any space in our game. Sorry. But you know what? Check out the show Critical Role, and that will teach you what D&D is. And I was like, oh, okay. And then I went and watched Critical Role, and the first episode of that show is very confusing because it begins with like 9+ minutes of just people describing events that haven't happened. But I guess because maybe the art or something was copyrighted, it's all just a blurry screen on YouTube. Like the whole, I don't know how many minutes is just an inexplicably blurry screen with voiceover from each of the players, lengthy voiceover from each of the players. And I was like, what is happening? And so by the time they actually started playing, I was already halfway out. And I was like, I don't know, I'll figure something out down the line. And then later that very year, while I was on tour for the show that I was in rehearsals for that I just mentioned, I got contacted by a friend of mine who was still in drama school. And he was like, hey, I have a buddy who's going to run a D&D game for us. You got to make a character. And I was like, oh, okay. And he took me on to D&D Beyond, and my very first character was called Greeble Longpike. He was a deep gnome. He was a deep gnome druid, and he had like left his family behind to try and get stronger so that he could come back and defend them more effectively against the raiders that kept like plaguing his village. And so that was my very first TTRPG character. I was immediately hooked. Actually, no, it wasn't my very first TTRPG character. I had played a TTRPG prior, but I hadn't gotten into TTRPGs as a whole. But this was my first D&D character. It wasn't even I made the character on D&D Beyond. The guy, the DM, was an anti-racist skinhead. So he was a skinhead who only beat up racist skinheads. And he ran, instead of a D&D game, he actually ran a Pathfinder one-shot for us. So I was playing a D&D character in a Pathfinder system, and I was still hooked. I was like, this is the greatest thing I've ever experienced. I love it. And so I continued playing, not with that guy, because that guy, I don't know what he did, but I kept playing with my friend. And then it eventually got to where I was like, okay, I want to play more often. And so I decided to DM the following February. I think I started playing in October. The following February, I was like, I'm going to start a game. The day after I started that game, I had rehearsals for another show. And when I went to rehearsals, I met some of my castmates who included Jasper William Cartwright, who ended up going on to found Three Black Halflings with me a year later. So I was actually his first real DM, because I went to the group and I was like, guys, I just started running D&D yesterday. Have any of you played it? And one of them was like, yes. And the guy who said yes is Jonathan Charles, who has been in a bunch of our series. He's done a lot of the music for the show. He did the theme song for the show. But he was like, yeah, I've played a little bit of D&D. And the rest of them were like, I don't know. Coincidentally, one of them, also in that cast, within a week or so of that conversation, went and filmed the announcement trailer. He did the motion capture for the announcement trailer for Baldur's Gate 3. I don't know how this all, like, it was really wild that this all was like coinciding at the same time. But they were like, I don't know. And I was like, okay, I'll run you a campaign. And so I started running a campaign for the whole cast. Jasper, all of them really got hooked, but Jasper was one of the most hooked. And that eventually led to the following year, us starting Three Black Halflings together.
That is such a fun story, and it's just here and there and everywhere, and I love it so much. It's really serendipitous how the tabletop of it all can bring us together and have friends who I assume y'all are going to be friends for life. You've been doing Three Black Halflings now for 5 years?
Yeah, just over
Yeah,
5 years.
congratulations. I mean, that's really incredible. And Jeremy, you've actually answered so many of my questions. How you started DMing, you wanted to play more D&D, and I feel like that checks a box. I feel like a lot of dungeon masters, they're playing like once a week, maybe once every other week. Scheduling is the biggest BBEG. And so I guess I'm just gonna start my own game. So I'm sorry that that happened to you. I feel like we don't get to see you as a player as often as when you're in the DMC. I don't see that as much. So I'd love to hear about what kind of characters that you like to play when you're in the player seat instead of the DMC.
Oh boy. You know what? I have not done a whole lot of self-examination about the kinds of characters that I like to play. However, I clearly must have certain types, because when I've played with people that I've played with before and I'll bring in a character, they'll be like, classic. I'll be like, what? Like, yeah, that's a very Jeremy character. And I'm like, okay. I definitely enjoy a mad scientist character. That I enjoy that. I enjoy I enjoy like mad scientists or nerds. I also enjoy like weirdly large or powerful brawny characters who are a little bit dumb but are still very competent at what they're trying to do. I've played a lot of those who are like a little bit dopey but very physically powerful and have pretty good like battle understanding. I have like a range of characters though. I enjoy I enjoy making a huge range of NPCs, like from really like scary NPCs to like sexy NPCs or whatever in between. But I don't usually play them as very often as PCs. I think most of my PCs tend to fall into either some sort of mad scientist, some sort of big brawny doof, or perhaps some sort of completely ridiculous engine of chaos. I did a character named Vandalin the Bronze, who was sort of a parody of Don Quixote, where instead of Don Quixote, who got obsessed with knights, he got obsessed with wizards. And so he sort of styled himself after Gandalf. He wasn't truly a wizard, but he called himself a wizard. He was in fact a bard because his power came from his own delusion. He believed in himself being magical so hard that he became magical as a result.
Honestly,
And
I love him for that. That's amazing.
thank you. Yeah, he was sort of a crazy old man who sounded like Ian McKellen's Gandalf, and he would talk about you face the wrath of the bronze wizard, Vandalin the Bronze, and he would prestidigitate like an echo, so it'd be like bronze, bronze, bronze. Because he wanted everyone to think he was extremely cool and epic, but he was just a deranged old man wandering the countryside having adventures.
10 out of 10, no notes, he's perfect. So, Jeremy, you talked a little bit of how you create NPCs as well as PCs, and I feel like sometimes that's something that new DMs struggle with, or at least can struggle with when they're first starting, having too many NPCs in their game because that means they have to wear the hats of all of those characters. So, I'd love to hear from you if you have any advice about NPC creation or honestly just anything in general for new dungeon masters.
Yes. So my piece of advice is to only create as many NPCs as are relevant for the time that you are in. Now, if the players come to you, the caveat to this is if the players come to you and say, hey, I have a bunch of characters in my backstory, you can sort of have those in reserve. But in terms of like on a session to session basis, only create as many NPCs as are actually going to be relevant during the adventure. Like if you are in a town, okay, what are they going to be doing in the town? Are they going to be going into the town and helping defend the town from some bandits? Great. You should maybe have the person who asks them for help, and maybe a person who gives them a reward, and maybe like a third person. But you don't need to come in pre-built with like 6 or 7 different NPCs. They will assume that more people exist in the town, and you can describe more people being in the town. I feel my suggestion would be have like a 2 or 3 fleshed out NPCs for a location to begin with, and then and when I say fleshed out, you don't need to have like a full backstory. You can just be like, this is kind of what this person's personality is. This is what their name is. Maybe this is what their voice is if you do a lot of voices. And I would say have one fun fact about the person that may or may not ever factor into things, but being like, oh, this person, the miller actually has a secret love for baking and loves to bake stuff and will go around and leave baked goods inexplicably on people's doorsteps when they do a nice thing, and no one knows who the baking bandit is. Maybe this other person dreams of becoming a professional folk dancer, but because they're living in this village, this was the mayor once. They wanted to become a professional folk dancer, but unfortunately, that's just not a career available to them in this village. Like that's a very, very small thing, but I feel like that also adds a little bit and a little bit of flavor. And then I would say in terms of like improvising NPCs, because you're still going to have a couple, just like have a list of names. Genuinely just have a list of names next to you. I also I will when I run D&D, a lot of times I will use like a chart that has all the D&D, I used to be races, now it's species listed on it, and I will have people roll dice at random to determine which species the person is. So it sort of involves the players a little bit in the creation of and everybody like, ooh, what's this person going to be? And I also have like a mixed option, so you can have like really weird combinations. I think the weirdest I've ever had was a Lokatha and a Harengon, so like a rabbit fish person. That one was
Okay,
unsettling. Yeah, that
I
one was
believe it.
but you can do that and just like in the moment create characters and trust that as your players are engaging with you, you can come up with a couple of silly characteristics or just engaging relevant characteristics that if the if the players want to, they will latch on to a particular character, or just be like, all right, great, glad we bought some stuff from the butcher, and you can just move on. So I would say only flesh out 2 or 3, have a list of names and maybe a list of species that you'd like to pull from. And then the other thing that I'm going to expand is I would also apply this suggestion to not just characters and NPCs, but also to the world as a whole. In my experience, it is very easy to get caught up in just world building for world building's sake, and you're like, I gotta have everything in place. But we're going to talk during this. We're going to talk about the city of the Black Rose. I was recently talking to. I've been playing in this setting for 5 years. I was recently talking to the folks at Roll and Play Press with whom I'm making the book, and they were like, "Have you ever given a name to the place that the city of the Black Rose, like the world that the city of the Black Rose is in?" And I was like, "No, no one has ever asked." And then they were like, "Okay, what about the government system?" And I was like, "Again, no one has ever asked, so I didn't make one up." And they were like, "Oh, okay." So I've been playing like dozens, if not hundreds of hours in this setting, and not once has anyone said, "Hey, is Mavros a monarchy? Is it an oligarchy? Do they have a governor? Do they have a president?" It was never relevant ever, yeah, both for APs or for home games. So that is something. It doesn't like I don't need that. It's nice to have, but I don't need it. So I would suggest that only have the world building that is absolutely like that is actually relevant. So if you are in a monarchy, if you're in like a kingdom, and for whatever reason the kingdom is going to like the monarchy is actually going to become relevant, it's a succession crisis, or the queen herself is contacting the players to be like, I need you to come help me, or something like that. Sure, come up with that stuff. But if you're not even close to the monarchy and you're in some backwoods part of the kingdom, then who cares? It doesn't need to be a monarchy. You can just be like, we're in this town, and maybe the people don't really have a strong national identity. So I feel like that would be my other advice: is only world build as much as you're actually going to be using. Because the other thing is that it can get you into a mindset where you're like, I have to shoehorn more stuff in here because I made it all up. So it needs to. I want to use it. And I think what's best for the game is usually just making stuff that is actually going to be in the game. Like that's going to be, you can have a couple of things out there that the players are like, ooh, what's that? But you do not need mountains of backstory. You do not need a completely figured out economic system for your kingdom, unless that's going to be a huge part of the adventure. That's what I would say.
I think a lot of DMs, especially when they are homebrewing a game, get really sucked into the I have to have everything fleshed out in this campaign before I can do anything. What are the cycles of the moon? For that fact, do I even have a moon in this world? And they really just get stuck on those details instead of making the adventure for the players and for the characters. So, something that I've seen DMs do is involving the players in creating a little bit of the world that they're going to be playing in. Is this something that you like to do beyond when the player says, hey, what's that over there? Or do y'all have like a session zero where they get to create some of it together to help ground their characters in the world?
I would say both. I liked for every character or for every player to have a little bit of world building in their backstory. Like we have an idea of where in the world they came from. And if they came from a part of the world that hasn't been created yet, then we'll create that part of the world for them. And that's really fun. That sort of involves them and helps them feel like they're more part of the world. But then, yeah, it really depends. If it's like you go into a bookstore and it's a magic bookstore and you see a glowing green light from within one of the shelves, that if I just threw that detail out there and people are like, I want to go investigate the glowing green light, then I'm going to try and improvise something that has to do with the glowing green light. But if they're like, hey, does this world have a moon? Because my powers come from the moon. That I might be like, hey, let's have a conversation right now in the moment. What do you guys think? I mean, I feel like we should have a moon because your powers come from the moon. But what do we want to do in terms? Do we want just a regular old moon? Do we want a couple of moons? Do we want to say that there's like what's the moon scenario here? Did the moon get blown up and there's just like a constellation of moon parts that appears in the sky at night that still continues to orbit the planet? And like that can be, that involves the players. Or if it's like, for example, you guys run into a bookstore. I need a name for a bookstore, and I need an adjective for the bookstore. Like I need one about how it looks. For you, I need to know how it feels, and for you, I need to know how it smells. And now everybody throws out a little bit, and we've all created a bookstore, and we also have the name of the bookstore. So maybe we even have the name of the proprietor, and from there we just continue to create. I think that is a hesitate. People a lot of times will hesitate to do that, especially for D&D, because the way Dungeons and Dragons is sort of understood. It's like the DM creates everything and the players just play in the playground. But I do think that one strength that a lot of other systems have is more of a collaborative world building element. And I think that that can strengthen the experience with D&D as well.
Amazing. Well, Jeremy, can you talk a little bit beyond making amazing NPCs that Not only do you have a list of, but also like 2 to 3 that are really lived in, have that fun fact. Maybe they're a dual citizen somewhere. Maybe they want to be a baker or were a mayor in a past life, as well as having a location that's not necessarily fully fleshed out, but does have player input. Can you talk about how you make your D&D and other TTRPG games immersive for your players?
So all of those are part of it, and as well as when I was talking about like during the session zero, creating the world together to an extent. Even if I'm the one creating most of it, I like to have as much player buy-in as possible. That's why when I run public games, I don't usually like to run public games in settings that I've already made, because if I've made a setting that is especially like associated with a specific genre, like for example, Mavros, the city of the Black Rose, is heavily influenced by noir and gothic horror and steampunk and all that kind of stuff. I prefer that people create characters that fit in with those genres to some extent. Even if they're subverting the genres, I'd prefer that it's something that fits in that setting. People can come in and be like, I'm a knight of this and that and the other. And it's like, all right, okay, well, yeah, I guess we can make that work. But then I'm like, why are we playing here then? We could do that somewhere else. So I usually prefer to say, hey, everybody, what kind of world do we want to buy? Do we want to play in? And I will, especially when I run like public games, I will often like put a poll. I'll put a couple of campaign and world ideas up, and people will vote on it. And will be like, okay, this one, great. And then I'll make something that fits what they've requested. I'll be like, do you have any other requests for things you might like to see? So anything that allows that the players can add. I think when a player tells you, hey, this is my backstory or this is what I'd like to see, they're literally telling you, like, this is what I want in the adventure. So they're telling you how to immerse them, essentially. So that is one trick, I would say. Another thing is just making sure you include the characters' backstories or personalities or wants meaningfully in the adventure. So, like the very, very first game I ever ran, which was D&D. I ran it. There was a character who was a Minotaur who had been thrown out from his clan and was like wandering the world, thinking he intended to be a king. He wanted to be a chief. That was what he wanted. He wanted to go back and reclaim his clan and become the chief of his clan and become this great Minotaur warlord. But in the meantime, he was just sort of wandering around, and he was very much a might makes right kind of guy. He was very violent and brutal and stuff. And I thought it would be fun to subvert that by having him encounter a group of Minotaurs who are nothing like the ones that he grew up around. So he encountered a bunch of very, very small, like halfling sized Minotaurs, a whole like community of halfling sized Minotaurs.
You made
Yes.
Shetland pony minotaurs, is what I'm hearing.
Yes, yes, we
That's
called them the
incredible.
Mini-Tars. Yeah, they were a group called the Mini-Tars, and they were all like magic based. They weren't really big into physicality stuff. They were all like, "Yeah, we love magic and spells," and he was like, "What is going on?"
I love that so much. Oh my gosh. That's really fun. I love like I love D&D for so many reasons, but I love that you can go so many different ways, and something that I think of is not going to be the same thing that you think of, because we all have our own little brains, and we're all just weird little guys being weird little guys on the internet together, and it brings
Mhm.
me so much joy. But something that's not very weird little guy of you, it's actually really cool little guy of you, is the fact that Three Black Halflings just had the incredibly successful Kickstarter for City of the Black Rose, for 5e and Daggerheart. So I just want to say, one, congratulations. That is
Yeah.
amazing. It was so cool to be able to see how successful your Kickstarter was pretty much from the moment you launched. So I'm so proud of y'all, and I want that to be the first thing I say. The second thing I want to ask, though, is when you started creating this, because this is what you've been using for Three Black Halflings, it's horror, it's noir. I want to know about the inspiration that you had when you were creating this setting. What was it stemming from?
Right. Yeah. That was, I mean, I actually did the exact same thing that I just said. I was in a home game. The home game that had the Minotaurs in it abruptly ended because we had a player quit the campaign, and it was just really sad because it was such like it felt like such a tight knit thing, and all the storylines were so intricate with each other that all of us were like, we can't keep going without her. So when she left, we were all like, I guess we'll have to do something else. And so I was like, hey guys, what if, I know the last time we just sort of did a generic, vaguely medieval fantasy thing. How about this time we actually vote on what we'd like to play next? And so I threw out a bunch of genres, and I was like, what do you guys want? I was hoping we could mix it up. And two of them were noir and gothic horror, and people were sort of torn between those two. And I was like, let's do them both. And so I was, because they seem to like, I think it's sort of a chocolate and peanut butter thing, where noir is a very dark, genre. Gothic horror also a very dark genre. I feel like the two of them actually merge very, very well. So I was like, let's do that. And so I started making this game for that, or sorry, this setting rather, for that home game. And we played in it for a while. A former member of Three Black Halflings, a former halfling, Unati, Luyanda Unati Lewis Niao, who currently, shout out, is starring in Wednesday. They're a series regular in the show Wednesday, season 2. Go check them out. They played Detective Santiago, or rather, Sheriff Santiago. But Unati, I brought Unati in as like the fourth person for the beginning of that campaign. And I basically made the setting for them originally. And for about a year-ish, like, we were just playing in it, having a great time, a little over year and a half maybe. And then I went to Jasper and was like, hey, I think we should use this for Three Black Halflings, because I think it's a setting that I haven't heard people play in before, like this exact kind of setting. I don't really hear a lot of noir influence on TTRPGs, especially not something that's like more heroic like D&D, where like noir is a very pessimistic genre. There's a lot of tension there between the genre and the game. I haven't heard this before. We should do it. And he was like, all right. He was like, really, like, yeah, okay. And then we actually did it, and he was like, okay, yeah, no, that was great. We should do that again. And so we did another series of it just last year as of recording this, City of the Black Rose season 2, Herald of Shadows, and it was great. We did it bigger and better than last time. We had a ton of guests. It was very exciting, and it was just fun. It was really, really fun. But the inspirations were definitely like movies that I've seen. So like The Third Man would be an example of a noir film that I've seen. A sort of, I would say, gothic horror movies, including, I don't know. I really like, I guess Let the Right One In isn't exactly gothic horror, but it is vampire. I really like Bram Stoker's Dracula. I enjoyed the most recent Nosferatu, but I had previously seen the first two versions of Nosferatu as well. So both of those were definitely influences. Also, early sci-fi was an influence. So like Metropolis was a big influence. A lot of, like classic Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde, the Dr. Frankenstein is another one. Like, those were all influences. H.G. Wells, his books as well were an influence in the creation of stuff. I drew from pulp magazines as well, like The Shadow, who is a sort of a vigilante that was the main inspiration for Batman. I've got like a whole character who's very heavily based on him, but the idea of like costumed vigilantes running around, like, it's not quite superheroes, but like more sinister than superheroes. They're much more willing to just kill people, like mob influence. There's just, I love mob movies as well. The first two Godfather movies are like my favorite movies ever. So a wide range of stuff. But Dark City actually would be another one that I can say from the 90s is sort of a noir sci-fi movie starring Jennifer Connelly and Kiefer Sutherland. Really good if you haven't seen it, worth checking out. But yeah, I would say all of those things. And music. I enjoy jazz. I enjoy a lot of stuff from like, especially older jazz. So I think the first jazz album I ever listened to was Miles Davis's Kind of Blue, which it's a very meditative and very atmospheric album. And I think I enjoy atmospheric jazz a lot. I know even like progressive rock, King Crimson's first album, especially the song Epitaph from the Court of the Crimson King, rather, this name of the album. I really like that as well. That was like an influence. I have a playlist on Spotify that I don't think I've ever really made public, but I have a playlist on Spotify that is all of the songs that I associate with the setting, as well as theme songs that people have chosen for their characters when they play in it. So the influences are pretty widespread. I guess also kind of Arcane. Weirdly, it is very similar to Arcane, but I've been playing in it for a long time before Arcane came out. So I can't say Arcane was like a huge influence, but there's definitely parallels, and I've enjoyed Arcane. So it's probably influenced it in some way or other.
Ooh, okay. I love all of that so much. And this is my formal petition for you to release the playlist, Jeremy. Please give the people what we want. If I'm just the only person still, release that bad boy. Please. I'd love to hear from you because it's very different going from making a campaign setting that you're using just for yourself in your own games to then writing it down as something that you're giving to the masses. And so I'd love to hear what the differences are. Was there anything that you weren't expecting that came up? Maybe it was the government, like we talked
Yeah.
about earlier, or other things.
Yeah, there so because it was created originally as a D&D setting, when we started saying, "Hey, let's make this into an actual book that's not just a D&D book." And it's D&D and Daggerheart, but it's also meant to be used across the board for fantasy RPGs. Like
Oh.
you could run Thirsty Sword Lesbians in it, you could run Pathfinder in it. I in fact I did videos on our Instagram. If you scroll down, you can see what it might look like to run a game in like Vampire the Masquerade or Call of Cthulhu. Like you with only some changes to like the setup, like with Call of Cthulhu, you'd have to start from a more magical standpoint. Like it has to be a more magical world. But you can still play that game in that world. Vampire the Masquerade, same thing. Like maybe you make vampires a bit more prominent, but that's really the main thing that you'd have to change. And maybe like you can pick and choose which parts of the World of Darkness lore you want to insert into it. But when I started doing that, we had to change the names of things. So like for example, because it was like heavily influenced by the Forgotten Realms originally, there was a whole section of our adventure in our home game that took place in the Shadowfell. Well, the Shadowfell is a great name, but I don't want to call it the Shadowfell if it's going to be a non D&D book. It needs to be a little bit more open. So we changed the name for our second series to the Gloaming. But that was originally the Shadowfell. There was, let's see. So okay, I like comics. I really like comics. There's in comic books, in X-Men comics specifically, there's a secret evil organization, or at least they're sinister, called the Hellfire Club. You may be familiar with them because the club in Stranger Things is named after them. However, in Stranger Things, I don't think they ever specify that they are named after an X-Men like organization. But so most people just thought of the Hellfire Club and they'd say, "Oh, that's the Stranger Things thing." So when we brought that into, and I named it the Hellfire Club in the home game as a reference to the X-Men before it ever showed up in Stranger Things season 4. And so when we were going to make it a public thing and we are like, "Oh yeah, this is going to be, people are actually going to hear this," I was like, we can't call it the Hellfire Club because everybody's just going to be sitting there being like, "Oh, it's a Stranger Things reference." And I'm like, "No, it's not." So we changed it to the Nightshade Lounge instead. But things like that, like having to change names of various things. And then the other thing that I wanted to change was, and I guess it didn't really occur to me when we were making it as a setting, was the idea of religion and a pantheon. Because normally with settings, people will come out with like a whole religious system and well, usually it's not much of a religious system. It's just pantheons. And they'll say, these are the gods that do this and that and the other. And then they don't really engage that much with the actual practicing of a religion. And I was like, oh yeah. So if the Roll and Play Press folks came to me and were like, we need a pantheon and religion. And I was like, okay. So I was like, let's have a different approach to religion in Mavros than you'd normally see. So I came up with like a whole new religious system that's centered around, it's closer, I think, to the way that polytheism actually functions in the real world, which is that people don't normally just pick a god and worship that one, which is what you normally see in depictions of the Forgotten Realms, is people will be like, oh yes, this is my god, I'm with that one. And in real life, what would normally happen is you'd be like, oh yeah, say you're in ancient Greece, you're like, oh yeah, there's a storm coming, so we're gonna pray to Zeus. Or I'm about to go out sailing, so we're gonna pray to Poseidon. Or there's a harvest, different. You say pray to the god of the harvest. Oh, I just lost somebody, so maybe I'm gonna pray to Hades and see if they're gonna be okay. Like that's really what you would do, is whatever god was most relevant to your life, that's the one you would venerate at any given time. But all of the gods were accepted to exist. People were like, well, yeah, they're all real. It's just I only need this one right now. And then what you would the only time you really have people saying, I only venerate this guy, is when they're part of a cult, which in the classical sense is not nearly as sinister as it is in a fantasy context. It's just like, yeah, we're part of the cult of Aphrodite. So we specifically worship her and, do rituals and different things that are supposed to honor her. So I was like, okay, let's kind of do that in Mavros, but mix things up so that, because it needs to be sort of system agnostic to a degree. Rather than just coming up with a ton of gods, I would rather come up with a way of thinking about religion that allows for people to insert their own gods from whatever they're playing into this world. So the idea in Mavros is that they tend to venerate ideas rather than gods. So they'll be like, the idea of fertility, if we're trying to like have a child, is what we're interested in, or the idea of war is where the real power lies, and all of the gods are just manifestations of that fundamental force, like that concept itself. The idea of death is what's important, and then all of the death gods are just that manifest into a person. And so in Mavros, all of the largest houses of worship are dedicated to ideas. They're massive cathedrals, and then when you go in there, there are all of these shrines and enclaves dedicated to specific death deities. So like if you were playing and you were like, oh, my cleric is a cleric of Lathander, say you're playing D&D and you're like, my cleric's a cleric of Lathander who's like a god of light and the sun. So there may be a specific cathedral in Mavros that is associated with the sun or with the concept of light, and you go in there and it's like, there's the Lathander area, I'm gonna go over here and pray. But you'll see people all over the place, and you can also describe like what a cathedral to the sun would actually look like on the inside, where it's like, I imagine it's very bright. Everybody's probably having to wear sunglasses. Like the people who spend a lot of time there are like permanently tanned. It's this beautiful, exultant place. It's also very warm. Like, there's like constant like mist things. People are having to avoid overheating. Maybe a form of worship is literally lying out. Like there will be people who are just getting tan as part of their daily worship. Different thing, like they're, if it's like yoga, their sun salutations are literally a form of venerating their sun deity. But that's like a fun thing that you can do with that. But I came up with that entirely out of necessity for the book. In our home games, it was like I had come up with a place called the House of the Grave that was dedicated to the concept of death and had a bunch of death gods within it. But that was because there's a bunch of death gods in the Forgotten Realms. That was why I'd originally done it. And I was like, let's just have one that covers them all. And so it was like, let's expand that idea so it covers all deities from whatever system you're trying to play. So that would be an example of something that I had to completely change and come up with just because we're making it for everybody now.
Well, you were incredibly busy with that and with everything else going on in your life. And like we said earlier, Three Black Halflings has been going strong since 2020. And so I'd love to hear from you about how you not only manage everything that you've got going on, but also combat the burnout, because that's incredibly prevalent in the tabletop industry. Everybody always thinks, I need to be doing more, and I need to be doing this, and I need to add this to my plate. And so,
Yeah.
as a man who is doing so much, I'd love to hear from you on how you take time for yourself, but also still get your stuff done.
I think it's important to find other things that are outlets for fun, because the reason that most people get into ttrpgs is because they're fun. But when that becomes your job, then it can kind of feel like it's getting swallowed up in some cases. And I think both in the process of like producing content, so if you're going to make an actual play, try and make it in a way that you're actually having fun. Like actually hope that everyone has a good time, and including the GM if you're the one making it. Like try and have fun with it. That's one thing. But I would say trying to like guesting on things, right? Doing things where I'm not in the GM seat, where I'm like, hey, I can come this evening and be on a stream. Like, for example, the charity streams that I've done with you are a really nice outlet for me to get to play and just be like, I'm just showing up, having a good old time and remembering why I love TTRPGs, having a good time with some cool people. And, I leave and I'm like, wow, that was awesome. That's like a really positive experience that is relatively low stress, that's, and I think having that mentality of like, okay, I'm going to come up, I'm going to show up, and I'm going to do my best and I'm going to do an awesome job, but I'm going to have fun while I do it, is I think a big way to help. And then also making sure that you have like a support system, people that you can talk to regularly, like being like, hey, this is how I'm feeling, this aspect of things are getting me down, both in and out of the industry, I would say. Because outside of an industry, I mean, look, whenever you work in an industry, it can be very difficult for people outside of the industry to really be able to relate in like a useful way. I used to date somebody who was in aviation, and everything they would tell me about aviation would always make me really mad, because I'm like, this company isn't treating you right, I don't like this. But I think it ended up having the unintentional effect where they're like, seems like you hate my job. And I'm like, no, I don't hate your job. I just hate that they're mistreating you. I don't like that. I think it's the fact that you love your job, I think is awesome. But I feel like that would be an area where I was trying to be supportive, but because I wasn't part of it, I wasn't able to like support in a way that was as effective as I wanted. And I think that the same is true of various industries. I think the same would be true when I would complain about stuff that was happening in TTRPGs. They played TTRPGs, but they weren't in the industry. So when I would complain about stuff, they would often be a lot harsher than I would be as well. And I think that it's great to have people both in and out of the industry that you can connect with. And either you talk about stuff in the industry or you talk about nothing to do with TTRPGs. And you just have a positive interaction with people about stuff that you're both interested in, something completely unrelated. Having, if you have time, having hobbies, for example, hiking or video games is a big one. People love video games.
Hobbies outside of TTRPGs? What do you mean? Do you mean Magic the Gathering?
Oh
I
boy,
took
I've
that
never
tumble
played
this year.
Magic.
You haven't? Oh,
No,
Jeremy.
I never have.
Oh, well, let me tell you that I learned how to play at PAX U in December, and it has just taken me by a chokehold. And I'm both happy and unhappy about that. So I don't know if you have an addictive personality, but if you do, probably stay away.
Okay, that's what I'll do then. Yeah, because I definitely do. Yeah, I've maybe hobbies that are slightly less addictive and less expensive, because that is one thing. TTRPGs can be an expensive hobby, but I feel like card games are an expensive hobby because you have to keep buying new sets.
Absolutely, 100%. So go back to the hiking. Make hiking your
Yeah,
hobby. Yep, that one's
yeah,
mostly free. You have to drive to get there, and sometimes you have to pay to park. That is nothing
yes.
considered to not TTRPGs, but TCGs.
I have one other thing, which is to find ways to, it sort of ties in with the idea of having fun with the stuff that you're doing whenever possible, but also find ways to, when you say, for example, say you're doing research. And I would say one way of doing research is, oh, I'm going to do a TTRPG that is in a setting that is like, or in a particular genre and is inspired. There's major works within this genre that I haven't seen, or that maybe I've seen, but I want to see again. I would say allow yourself to enjoy like watching stuff and reading stuff for research. When you do that, don't just be like, okay, we got to lock in. Be like, no, enjoy it. And then when you come away from it, be like, what do people like? What do I enjoy about this? What about this appeals to me? Because that will inform you creatively. But I feel like experiencing art in and of itself can be rejuvenating and encouraging and challenging in a good way. So I would say allowing yourself to just enjoy stuff whenever possible, even when it's tied in with work. I would, that is a big piece. And then also just taking breaks. If at all you can take a break, just take breaks from time to time. Like either like even if it's a short break every day, a short break for like a couple of days, a vacation of some kind, where you're just like, I'm not doing any TTRPGs this week. We're not doing any streams for a couple of weeks. Like don't be afraid to do that, because the other option is that you completely implode and that's a lot worse. So
Absolutely. I've seen some folks take social media breaks for as little as 1 week up to a month, and they come back
mhm.
and they're still working on the hobby, but not doing the content creator facing forward of it all. And I think that that is honestly so incredibly smart. So consider all of the things that Jeremy has said, consider hiking, and I don't know, just treat yourself to breaks. It's such a good thing to do. Even outside of your hobby, you deserve a break as a human being.
Mhm.
And speaking of human beings, I have only two questions left, which is kind of a bummer. But my next question is about humans, and I think honestly that humans have a really bad rep in D&D for being boring. You can
Mm.
be a sexy tiefling, you can be a cool elf, you can be a gnome as your first character. And so, what I would like to hear from you, and it might not be a player character, but maybe an NPC or a PC that you have created that has been really standout and unique across any TTRPG system. And I'd just like to hear from you what made them special.
Okay. Well, to kick things off, Vandal in the Bronze that I mentioned earlier is a human. He is in fact a human, and there's nothing boring about him. I think this is a case of It is not the metaphor that I want to use is like a sex metaphor, but it's not the size of the boat, it's the motion of the ocean. It's not what your character looks like. It's what the who your character is that makes them engaging. Like, look, you can have a sexy tiefling, okay, but there's a lot of sexy tieflings. At this point, that's almost a stereotype or a trope in and of itself. What makes your sexy tiefling more interesting or interesting in it that distinguishes it from all of those other sexy tieflings? So I would say, let's see, another NPC that I came up with uh in our series Outlaws and Obelisks, which is not in the city of the Black Rose, but it's in a post-apocalyptic North Africa inspired western setting that I made for 3 Black Halflings called Utarum. There in episode 2, Jasper's character, who is like he's a homebrew subclass for the artificer that we made that gave him the spell Find Steed. He went out into the desert and grabbed a camel and like attached some kind of a mechanism to the camel that gave it sapience. And that was him casting the spell Find Steed to make it his steed. But I guess he didn't look at the language of the spell, which is that the steed can talk. It can talk, but only to you. And so I was like, all right, so you just grabbed a random camel and gave it sapience. This camel is now like basically the camel saw him as like its parent and as like a deity, but he was completely his character is very emotionally withdrawn, so he was completely uninterested in giving the camel any positive feedback. And so over the course of the series, the camel became increasingly obsessive in an unhealthy ways. He started referring to him as my prince all the time, started like offering to kill anyone that seemed even the slightest bit interested in his character. It got like it was just a very toxic relationship, but was very, very funny. It was a hilariously toxic relationship between these two, of the camel desperately wanting his approval and him just wanting the camel to shut up. And then the camel being like, how long would you like me to shut up for? And be like, give me an hour. He's like, okay. And then like joyfully shut up and then be like, I did it. Are you happy? Did I make you happy by shutting up for an hour? And he's like, okay, we got to do 2 hours this time. It's like, okay, I'm getting better. And it was fun. It was very, very fun. But that was another one. People really enjoyed that NPC. And then I have a third, which is a Mavros NPC. This one is for a home game. Although he may appear in a future Mavros series, we'll see. He was a driver. He was a bugbear chauffeur that worked for this really rich inventor lady that she sent him down to help the party, like help chauffeur them up to her to where she lived. And he was just a friendly middle-aged dude who got words wrong all the time. And his boss is like constantly using techno babble, and he would be like, yeah, she was telling me she has to transmogrify all of the dialectics in order to more effectively transmutational all the portholes into my mouth. He was like, what? It was just, and he was just very enthusiastic, very friendly to everybody, give everybody advice. But he was just enjoying life. And that was his whole thing, is just a large hairy man in a chauffeur outfit who would drive a limo. He was a beloved NPC to the point where Unati asked that their character be able to like marry him. So they ended up getting married.
Hell yes. We love to hear it. Oh my gosh. Okay. My last question for you, Jeremy, before we move on from the interview portion, is that tabletop implies the existence of table bottom, and I would love to hear where you weigh in on this philosophical debate.
So are there people who don't believe in the existence of a table bottom? Because I mean, if we're playing D&D, surely that's the players. All of the players should be table bottoms, and the DM, I mean, their dungeon master surely is the tabletop.
That's where you weigh
Uh,
in?
yeah, I think that yes, I think that you absolutely must have. You don't always need it. You can have table switches, and you can have like non-hierarchical TTRPGs where it's like we're all the tabletop and the table bottom at the same time. I mean, that's what Powered by the Apocalypse is, right? It's all about switching. Like the GM, sure, they're technically in charge, but they're handing over power to the players. Like that's really what the dichotomy is who has more agency or authority in the story at this point. So that's very much like a Switch TTRPG. Yeah. So and there are absolutely ones where people are like, I like really mean DMs who are just horrible and give me no power and do horrible things to me. And then there are other ones who are like, I don't like it when you when you're so mean. I like it when you're nice. And it's like, cool. So you want a soft tabletop as opposed to, yeah, 100%, 100%. And I guess would that mean that each individual TTRPG, like in terms of its genre and its flavor, would then be like individual kinks that would be manifesting at the table?
Maybe. It's up to
Yeah,
you.
like if it's like a if it's thirsty sword lesbians, does that mean that we have like a violence and romance kink in the context of our tabletop table bottom relationship?
I think so. I think that's exactly
Yeah.
what it means. And to go back a little bit, I have one question for you now
Hmm.
surrounding this. You were the DM for the camel, right?
Yes.
Yeah, I think you're a table brat. Moving on, we're going to go into the game portion.
No. No.
All right, my friend, you have chosen to play Smash or Pass, and we have decided on playing the D&D version of Smash or Pass. And so I have given you a slide, and right now the first one is a D&D tiefling. Now, specifically, this is the D&D tiefling that you can find in the player's handbook, and I would love to hear what your thoughts are.
Mm. I would say this is definitely a smash. I would say this is a very sexy tiefling. This feels like, in many ways, one of the quintessential sexy tieflings. Yes, this tiefling is attractive. They look powerful. They got some magic in those hands, if you know what I'm saying. They have a tail that looks both thick and flexible. They have horns that look like you could hold on to them. Yeah, absolutely. I'm totally gonna smash this tiefling.
I love this game so much. Moving on to the next one, we're talking about the gelatinous cube.
Ooh. So, if we're counting the D&D movie Honor Among Thieves as canon, which I feel like we should,
We are.
it is theoretically possible to enter a gelatinous cube and not be immediately dissolved. So, if there's a way to, and here's the other thing, I need to know if the gelatinous cube is experiencing pleasure. I would prefer to smash only if I can, like, if there's some sort of mechanism whereby I can understand what the gelatinous cube is enjoying, and then we can do it. Now, if the gelatinous cube's enjoyment is dependent upon my demise, then no. But if it's like, if I can edge the gelatinous cube and put, like, if it's like I like to dissolve people and things, and so I can put a little bit of me in there for a little bit and then pull it back out, and it's like, oh, almost. And its movement speed is so slow that, like, I'm constantly like moving back or whatever. It's constantly trying to get me. Like, that sounds like it could be a fun arrangement for the gelatinous cube. I feel like, and also for me, because it's like, okay, maybe, I don't know, maybe the tingling sensation is fun, in small amounts. But I'd give it a try, as long as I could find out whether, if there was a mechanism whereby I could determine whether the gelatinous cube was being pleasured by what we were doing.
Incredible. All right, so far we're 2 for 2. Moving on to our next, we've got Minthara from Baldur's Gate 3.
It's a definite smash. Minthara is my favorite character from that game. I think I would say, yeah, Minthara is my number one, followed by probably, it's like a tie between Karlach and Lae'zel. But I appreciate how, if this is a trait that I would say, especially for both Lae'zel and Lae'zel and Minthara, I love how straightforward they are. And they're like, look, this is what I want. This is how I feel. Is this what you would like? Minthara is also just really funny. Minthara, her classic, it was a beautiful webbing line, all of her wizard lines to Gale. She also is having I think I've seen just about all of the sex scenes in the game just from playing through it. Hers is by far the freakiest, aside from Gale. Gale's is actually the most insane, but his first one is like full on Dr. Manhattan. But in terms of the ones that are not like bizarre metaphysical experiences, hers is by far the freakiest. She seems like she just assumes a top role, but she's also much more of a service top, because she's like, tell me what you want when she goes to do stuff. So in that, I feel like she would be, with how protective and loving and devoted she is, how sincere she is, and also I just think she's really hot. I would definitely smash Minthara all day. Or I
In
guess she would actually smash me. Knowing Minthara, I feel like she would be the one smashing me.
Hey, to each their own. Moving on to our next one. We're
Well, I want to hear
keep
from you though. Would you smash or pass these characters so far?
let's see. Okay. D&D Tiefling, specifically from the player's handbook. Yes, smash. Absolutely. 100%. I was like, let's
Hmm.
throw this man a bone. Easy
Yeah.
peasy. This is actually the second time I've included the gelatinous cube in Smash or Pass on Tabletop Humans. Candace did a Monster Fucker edition, and
Hmm.
we talked about the gelatinous cube. I just don't think I could do it. I just
Mm.
being surrounded in I
What
know
if you
that.
could get it to only extrude parts of itself, and so you weren't being surrounded, but you were surrounding it, like it was going into you?
Well, that just sounds like a dildo at that point. And so sure,
Yeah, but it
smash.
tingles. But it
Ooh,
tingles. There's like a
okay.
time limit.
No
There's a
thanks.
tension.
Nope. I'm good. Um, Minthara, I've actually never played all the way through of Baldur's Gate, so
Hmm.
let's just get that out of the way. I've gotten to the third act three times
Hmm.
and I still haven't finished. And it makes me feel really bad inside doing an evil run through of a game.
Hmm.
So I don't think that I would do it. Just knowing how
Oh.
evil she is.
You should. So I don't. This is for your next run. If you haven't done it yet, in Act One, you should try knocking her out instead of killing her, because you won't get the sex scene, but you still can have a romance with her. The only way you get the sex scene is if you side with her against the tieflings. But if you knock
Oh.
her out, she reappears in Act Two, and you can recruit her, and you can still have a romance. And what you understand, like you understand in Act One, she is an evil person, but she's actually way more evil as a result of what the Absolute does. Like you
Okay.
find out that she was actually being mind controlled in Act One to be that way, and she wouldn't have done a lot of those things if she hadn't been influenced in that way. So a lot of her storyline is like getting revenge on the people who had captured her in the first place. So in Act Three, also in Act Three is where you get the "it was a beautiful webbing" line. There's like you can go to a circus and there's a clown, and if you bring her with you, this clown is just really cringy, and she's like, "Just give the word, and I will kill the clown. We would be hailed as heroes." And then the clown asks for a volunteer, and you can be like, "My friend Minthara is the funniest person I know," and she gets mad. But then you're like, you can be like, "Go on, Minthara, tell him the one about the man who married a Drider," and she actually approves of this. You get approval for this, and she's like, "It was a beautiful webbing." It is great. Minthara is awesome, and you would also ask her for her opinions on all of the other characters. And she's very critical, but she's also very accurate. Like you could tell she's a very insightful person.
Okay.
She loves to read people for filth. It's
Heard,
great.
Chef. Maybe a year from now, when I've hopefully finished one of these playthroughs, I'll
Yeah.
start a not so evil run and recruit her and see if my answer changes. But until
Mhm.
then, we're going to move on to the Emperor, also from Baldur's Gate 3.
Yes. I have, and I mean, according to the game, it's the best experience of your life. So I don't like the Emperor as a character. I don't like the way that he treats you. I think he's very manipulative, and he is not nice. He is absolutely a bad person, or it is very much a bad person. But if it was like, look, you want this, I'm down. Let's just do it, and nobody's getting their brain eaten at the end of it. Sure, I feel like if because I mean the emperor presumably is able to fire all of the neurons inside of your brain and like cause the pleasure neurons to just go berserk in there. So yeah, nah, I'd be down if that's the arrangement. I'd probably swap out the emperor for Omelowum, who is like you meet Omelowum in Act One, a completely different Illithid, much nicer, much more respectful and considerate. I would absolutely be down to be with Omelowum for sure. The Emperor, it'd have to be like a one night stand. With Omelowum, we can try like a relationship
Okay.
if Blurg is okay with it.
I think it's probably going to be a few drinks in, and it'd be what that tentacle do, and then that'd be it. Again, one time thing. You got to try it once, but
Yeah.
yeah. All right. On a similar vein, we're going to move on to the Beholder, or a
Hmm.
Beholder from D and
I think
D.
this is specifically Xanathar, isn't it?
You know,
Because he's got the little
I'm.
goldfish.
Oh yeah. Well, maybe I'll change that photo for this when it goes onto YouTube. Just a
Mhm.
Beholder.
Okay. A beholder. it's okay. If I was able to have a situation with a beholder, well, here's what I'm wondering: how do you pleasure a beholder? Like, what, where, and how
Jeremy,
does the beholder
Jeremy,
pleasure me?
very obviously they like to watch.
You know what? Yes, 100%. If I was on good enough terms with a beholder, and I could like hook up with somebody else, and the beholder was like, "Sounds good," I would be willing. Sure, yeah. It would depends on the beholder, but I am not anti-beholder in this case. It would just I need to have the kind of relationship with a beholder where I'd feel comfortable doing that. But I feel like, yeah, if it's like I watch, then it's like sounds good to me. We can figure something out.
On the opposite side, I don't think I'm gonna have a good enough relationship with a beholder. And even if we did, I'd be like, no, thank you. Please go wait a couple rooms over. Don't even
You wouldn't
want,
be like what
not
them
that you
eyes do.
have ears, but I don't want you to hear this either. So moving right along, we have the Dungeon Master from the
Yeah.
Dungeons and Dragons series from the 80s.
So the way I see it, this guy is there's something about him that makes me think that he's secretly a freak. Maybe not so secretly a freak. I don't know if it's the way he's holding his little fingers there. I don't know if it's like his strangely pointy head, his mouth that's just too large, or his eyes that look like he's half asleep, or maybe he's imagining something. But there's something about this guy that makes me think he's a little freak, and I would at least be down to have a conversation. We could have a conversation about what he would intend and what he would want to do. I don't look at him and say yes. There are some people on this list that I look at and I say yes. He is somebody I look at and say, tell me more. So he is a maybe smash.
Okay. All right. I don't think I can. I'm gonna be honest. Everything that you described earlier makes me go, no, thank you. I'm good. Appreciate the opportunity. I don't know if I'm showing up to the next session, actually. Maybe you should get someone else to play the sexy tiefling for the
He's been
party.
running the game for me, and then he propositions me. That's weird. I'd be like, nah, we've thrown everything off here. You got to let the player come to you first. You cannot
Mhm.
as the DM, be like, hey. So, Jess, I think you are not into tiny, bald men with long, spindly fingers and gigantic mouths.
For all of the tiny, bald men with large, spindly fingers, and nope, I'm sorry, I'm not. No. I gotta say no.
You got to draw the line somewhere.
Uh-huh. So we're going to move that line over to a mimic. What are our
Yeah.
thoughts?
I don't get the impression that a mimic actually likes sex. You know what I mean? Like there is in Baldur's Gate 3, there is a scene in which someone is inside of a mimic, and I did not get the impression that the mimic was enjoying it or that the other person was enjoying it. So I got to think that I get the impression that mimics maybe don't reproduce sexually. I don't know if they experience sexual pleasure, and I feel like if I'm going to be engaging sexually with like another person or another sentient being, I would prefer for it to also be having fun. And I think I'm gonna have to say no to the mimic. If there was a way for us to like bridge the gap where maybe the mimic doesn't really eat me, but we do something where maybe it's a little scary, but the mimic is having a good time and I can also have a good time, then maybe. But I just don't think that's in the cards. So I'm gonna have to say pass on the mimic.
Okay. My answer now changes because at first it was like, that's a big tongue. That's a really big
It's
tongue
true.
right there.
It is a
Um,
very big tongue.
but I'm gonna have to say same, what Jeremy said. Moving right along, we have the concept of leveling up at the end of each of your D&D sessions.
Ooh, if it's a short campaign, sure, why not? Smash. If you're gonna do it, if you're gonna justify it within the story or everybody is on board, absolutely smash.
Incredible. Yeah, smash. Easy smash. A good going from level 1 to level 20. I've never done that before. That would be
Mm,
so hot. I would love that. I think I've gotten up to level 10 from level 1 before, and that's it. I've played a couple level 20 sessions, but it's not the same as having that
mm.
like year plus long campaign.
Yeah. I think you just gave me an idea for an AP, which is that you do like a 20 session AP with a very small cast, probably not like 5 or 6 people, probably like 2 or 3 people, where the whole premise of the campaign is at the end of each episode, you get like in between each episodes, you gain a level. And it could be like there's a time skip. So it's basically a sort of slice of life adventurer thing where you're seeing these adventurers at key moments in their lives over the course, like as they grow from level 1 to level 20. And at the end of the session, they make some sort of big decision. And every time that will influence where they go after this. So maybe that's why they end up multi-classing, or maybe that's why they end up in a different place in the world. I think that could be a really cool series.
Jeremy Cobb, this is my official petition for you to make this happen. That sounds literally incredible. Oh my gosh, give the people what we want. If I'm the only person, give me what I want. Come on. Okay.
Absolutely. I'll have to think about it because that actually does sound like it could be a pretty cool idea. I could
Hell
actually
yeah.
really enjoy that. Yeah.
All right, we're going to move on to the concept of hearing I have dark vision during each session.
Unfortunately, I feel like this is going to be there whether you choose to smash it or pass it. It's just there. You can't help it. It's going to come one way or another. This is going to come. Even if you're not the one, even if you're out of the room, it's still coming. You could be in the bathroom and you come back and it's already come, and you're like, yeah, somebody had dark vision, huh?
Hmm. Yeah, I have the kind of the same sentiments. It's going to happen no matter what. Come, come, come. It's come,
Yeah,
came.
yeah.
All right, moving on to our final one, a dragon. It can be any dragon. It doesn't necessarily have to be this dragon, but it's a dragon in D&D.
Yeah, I would totally be down. Yeah, 100%. This was a PC I played. I played a PC who turned out to be a dragon secretly. I guessed it on a show. Shout out to my friends over at No Small Roles, who are a UK based TTRP. They're an AP series who are they're all actors. They're all professional actors. It's really really fun. And one of the characters in her backstory had that she dated a blue haired bard named Dwayne Fabulosa, who not dated, sorry, she eloped. She was supposed to get married, but she met this guy who was a musician at the wedding, and he wooed her. She ran away with him, and then he ditched her. Like he went out for like milk or something and never came back. And so I showed up as Dwayne Fabulosa, and it turns out that I ran away because I was secretly a dragon who came from another part of the world, and I had a husband named Art, and the two of us were like trying to travel from that region to another because like there were evil dragons after us, and there we basically Art was I accidentally caused it so that Art died. I tried to save us, but in the process, I accidentally took actions that led to Art's demise. And ever since then, Art's ghost has been following me around. And every time I have a relationship with a new person, Art starts haunting me, and so I have to run away. And so the idea was that I ran away from Gwendolyn, is the character's name, because Art showed up again, and it became a whole thing. And then I show up in the finale as a full blown dragon. It was great. But all of that to say, absolutely, all day, I would absolutely hook up with a dragon. They could turn into the really old ones can turn into people, but the big ones, I don't know. Do they have cloacas? What do they have? I feel like it would be interesting to find out one way or another. And they have lots of magical powers, and they're super smart creatures. So yeah, I'm absolutely down to date a dragon, 100%. Let's smash that dragon all day.
Hell yeah. My answer is much shorter. Just yeah.
Yeah,
Just yeah.
I talk a lot.
Well, I don't have a cool I was actually a dragon the whole time story to throw in. And, dragons are cool. Yeah, I'd do it.
Yeah.
Well, my friend, thank you so much for going through all 10 slides. I think let's do some quick math. You said a definite no to one of them. Well, two of
Mhm.
them, if we talk also about the concept of hearing I have dark vision during each session, but we know it's happening
Yes.
anyway. Incredible.
Yes.
All right. Well, I picked a pretty good bunch then. Thank you so much for playing. I really appreciate it. My friends,
Thank
we
you.
are going to take just a very short break while you listen to me talk about some upcoming TTRPG charity initiatives that we have. So don't go anywhere because we've got Jeremy talking about some of the amazing upcoming works that he's doing and his good morning for the morning. Hi, friends. This is your reminder that you can go to Session Zero Clothing and use code JustTheHuman for 10% off your order for t shirts like this. Or t shirts like this. Or my personal favorite, t shirts like this. I'm just kidding. I would never like the Feywild more than I like owlbears. All right, my friend, thank you so much for joining me today for our interview session for the amazingly fun little smasher pass that we just had. Right now, I'd love to hear about any projects that you have coming up or anything that you just want the people to know about. You're doing so much in the space, and I'd love to take this time to hear more about it.
Oh boy. Okay, so right off the bat, go check out Three Black Halflings if you haven't already. We are a TTRPG podcast that we talk about diversity and inclusivity in TTRPGs and nerd stuff in general. We also give GM and player tips, and we do actual plays. Our most recent actual play series was City of the Black Rose, Herald of Shadows, GM'd by me. But we've done a bunch of different stuff. We've done the Wagadu Chronicles, which is a sub-Saharan African Afro fantasy setting, which is really, really cool. I didn't even make that one. We just played in it and it was amazing. But we did 2 seasons of that, The Cub and the Caterpillar and The Curse of the Spider Queen. We also did, I mentioned Outlaws and Obelisks. If you want to hear Camel, the Table Brat in action, you can hear that, which is a post-apocalyptic North Africa-inspired Western adventure. We got, in that one, features Emily Axford and Connie Chong as players. We did, I should say, City of the Black Rose has a tons of guests, or excuse me, has tons of guests. We have Brennan Lee Mulligan, we have Mark Meir, we have Abubakar Salim, we have M. Carlson, we have C. Thomas, we have Christina Ariel. There's more. There's a lot more. Caldwell Tanner is a cast member, so go check that out. There's just a ton of things on Three Black Halflings that you should check out. It's just a smorgasbord of different things. And in fact, friend of this show, Candace the Magnificent, is currently is not just currently, just recently got announced as the new fourth halfling. That's right. Three Black Halflings actually has 4 halflings. And we're not changing the name. We're still Three Black Halflings, but Candace is also there. They're one of the halflings. So go check out Candace's episodes. They're in a lot of our APs, as well as a lot of our talk show episodes. We do tons of interviews as well. So that's the first thing that I'll plug is Three Black Halflings. And then the second thing I'll plug, which is Three Black Halflings related, is the 3BH Patreon. We have a lot of like bonus episodes on there. You can get our regular episodes early. We have like talkbacks for our APs on there, as well as some upcoming projects. We're planning to hopefully start doing some like watch parties and stuff with patrons, watching movies and different things like that. So go absolutely check out the Three Black Halflings Patreon. Also, I forgot the other thing I was going to say, but it just came back to me, which is the City of the Black Rose Kickstarter. The Kickstarter has ended, but you can still support. The City of the Black Rose is I've already said it, is a gothic horror noir setting that I made, that we have played. You can hear it in action in our AP series, but it's going to have so much more stuff. There's going to be tons of NPCs. There's going to be tons of different locations, tons of different factions. If you play Daggerheart, there's going to be a Daggerheart campaign frame. There's going to be environments. There's going to be all sorts of like Daggerheart specific stuff that is being made for this book that we're doing with Roll and Play Press. It's coming out, I believe, next year, but you can go sign up for the Kickstarter now. I don't know if you can still get the Investigators bundle, but that has like a full-on, the whole thing comes in like a briefcase, like a box that's styled to look like a detective's briefcase. And then as you open it, it's got like all these different compartments for like the stickers and the book and all the different aspects. It's the coolest thing in the world. So absolutely go check out the Three Black Halflings book, City of the Black Rose. Is there anything else that I have to plug that is coming up imminently? Not off the top of my head. I actually don't think that there is right now. Stay tuned, though, because we have a lot of big stuff coming at Three Black Halflings. And I guess if you're going to be at PAX Unplugged, hopefully I'm going to be doing a number of things at PAX Unplugged, including possibly some 3BH panels, possibly a panel with you, Jess. We'll see. Hopefully things get approved. And also, hopefully, this is a possibility. I might be running games in the City of the Black Rose that you can sign up for. It will be like a pre-written adventure with pre-gen characters, and you can jump into the City of the Black Rose and have a Mavrusian adventure, a very nice, mysterious, smoky, dark, and romantic evening with me and several other people in a large room.
Incredible. And I bet there's going to be a beholder like 3 rooms over trying to listen. My
Definitely
friends,
a beholder, a voyeur beholder. Definitely just sitting there like, oh yeah, louder. And all the little eyes are like pressed up against the wall.
oh, incredible. My friends, go and check out the Three Black Halflings just in general. Make sure you check out their Patreon, the City of the Black Rose Kickstarter. And then definitely, if you're going to be at PAX U, we'll both be there. And it's going to be an incredible time of TTRPGs, unfortunately, Magic the Gathering, and so much more. You're going to lose so much money and you're going to have such a great time. But until then, Jeremy, I think that you have a good morning to share.
It's
All right,
right,
the
or you're
floor is
right, rather.
yours.
Okay, so good morning to everyone who was a fan of Redwall and or Animorphs growing up, and to them only.
You heard it here, folks. I'm just the human, and this is Jeremy Cobb from Three Black Halflings. And together, we're saying good morning to everyone who was a fan of Redwall and or the Animorph series, and to them only.